I think Dabo Swinney's kind of a douche at times, and he was even kind of a douche here, but I respect him for it because what he did is what all the coaches need to start doing. So we're going to get into that in a minute, but I want to go to Rick, who's listening in Nashville on iHeartRadio. He wants to talk about the Buccaneers coaches, and then we'll shift over to the college stuff because I got a lot to say on that Dabo Swinney stuff. So, Rick, good morning. What's up, man? What do you want to talk about with the Bucs coaching staff?
Yeah, well, what I wanted to talk about was your take on how, if if somebody reads an article about somebody like Zach Robinson or whatever, somebody reads anything, they're either in love with the guy or completely against the guy, and they have no real knowledge about it. And it's something that's driven me nuts for a long time. Look, I was interested in Nate Shieldhouse. Why was I? Well, I read some stuff about him, but it's not like, oh, my God, we got to get him.
Right.
And
Rick, if I showed you a picture
I'm a furniture guy.
Rick, if I showed you a picture, Rick,
I'm sorry.
If I showed you a picture of 20 coaches, could you even pick out which one is Nate Shieldhouse?
Probably.
Oh, you could?
Him I could probably do because I read the article. There was a picture, and I know what he looks like. Okay, but that doesn't mean I know anything about him other than what I read in the article. And this is the thing. I'm a furniture guy in Nashville, and I hear people who are a plumber in Lutz, and I hear all this, and everybody acts like they're such experts versus the guys who've had a career in football who are interviewing these guys who know better. And it cracks me up, like every famous or well-known, somewhat name recognition free agent. We should have gotten him. Well, what if he plays the wrong style defense? What if he's – I mean, people don't put it all together, and they think they're the experts, even though, I'm a furniture guy in Nashville. Am I supposed to sit there and pontificate online about how they made a wrong call?
Well, Rick, we all loved Hassan Reddick, right? He was going to be the greatest. He was taking us to a Super Bowl. He was going to be one and done, and he was on a contract year, so he could go get a big deal somewhere else. Nobody was upset about Hassan Reddick, and look, it didn't work out.
Right, and what does concern me when I read the quotes from Brady, what happened to this organization, that does concern me because you're getting it from somebody. It's not from somebody like me. You're getting it from someone who knows what they're talking about. And stuff like that concerns me. But listen, we've had way worse days in this town when it comes to football. These are still the good years. And people forget that. And, they look at it and go, we were 8-9. We'd have killed for that years ago.
Yeah, but the bar, Rick, I appreciate the call. You got to raise the bar, though. I don't blame the fans for raising the bar. I've said that about the Tampa Bay Rays for years. Making the playoffs at one point, that was the goal. And then it's like, all right, they're consistently going to the playoffs. Now win the playoff series. All right, now get to the World Series. They did that. All right, now it's win it all. And then they win 100 games, and then they don't win the playoff series. The bar does have to be raised. And now the Rays are kind of back to square zero, and I think at this point now the expectation is finish above 500, sadly. But, at one point our expectations raised on the Rays as well, and that's completely normal, and it should. I don't think the fans, just because the history of the Buccaneers hasn't been good overall, doesn't mean that you shouldn't raise your bar. I'm not saying that these are the worst times ever, but the fans here have been accustomed to better. Starting in 2020, you got Tom Brady. You had an amazing team, one of the best defenses, and you win a Super Bowl. And, everyone tells you that things are going to get worse after Tom Brady leaves, and they don't really get worse. You end up winning the division a couple times in a row. And, look, I know part of that's fugazi because it is the NFC South, and so it appears like it's better than it was. But I have no problem with the fans raising the bar and not totally being happy right now. But I will say the one thing, Todd Bowles has done a good job. Him and Jason Light is hiring general managers, hiring offensive coordinators. Now, they miss with Grizzard, but I remember when Grizzard was hired, everybody was pumped because he was so good on third down. He was this genius on third down when it comes to pass plays, and it didn't quite work out. He wasn't experienced enough, and I think now you're getting a guy that played the position, has been an experienced play caller, and can sit down on the bench and show Baker, hey, here's what happened on this play. Here's what we did wrong. I don't know if Grizzard was that guy, But the one thing that Light and Bowles have done as a combination is they've nailed the offensive coordinator position 2 out of 3 times. And, 3 out of the last 4 OCs have worked out. I know, Byron's not around anymore and he's not getting looks at any jobs, but you won a Super Bowl with him, so I would say he was successful here. Then you had 2 good head coaching jobs. All right, I want to flip over to the Clemson and Ole Miss drama that's going on, because this is something we haven't seen yet. No coach has called out another coach for tampering, and it finally happened. I wish this was happening to Lane Kiffin and not Pete Golding over at Ole Miss, but unfortunately it's not. But Lane Kiffin's day will come. So January 6th, Luke Farrelly, a linebacker, committed to Clemson. He entered the transfer portal from Cal. He visits Clemson, and he commits to them, signs a financial aid agreement. He moves to Clemson, rents an apartment, buys a car, enrolls in classes, and begins attending team meetings and workouts on January 6th. January 7th, he is officially signed and enrolled. January 14th to the 15th, first signs of an external contract. More than a week after Farrelly started classes, his agents contact Clemson staff and alerts them that Ole Miss is aggressively pursuing him. Clemson's general manager tries to get Ole Miss to stop communicating with the linebacker, according to Dabo Swinney. Ole Miss's GM, Austin Thomas, says he isn't part of any tampering, but suggests Pete Golding, quote, does what he does. Now, I love what Dabo Swinney did here, because he goes, look, he's been a coach for 4 weeks. If he stops now, I'm not going to turn him in. I'm going to give him some grace, were the exact words that he used. I'm going to give him some grace. Pete Golding doesn't stop. So Dabo ends up doing exactly what he says he's going to do. And that's what this press conference was about. He's turning him in. So despite Swinney giving Pete Golding a second opportunity to back away, Pete Golding then directly texts the linebacker Farrelly while he's in class. And he says, quote, I know you are signed, but what is your buyout? And Swinney considers this blatant tampering, which it completely is. So January 16th through the 22nd, Ole Miss offers a massive contract to this linebacker. Dabo Swinney claims Ole Miss offers Farrelly a large contract starting at around $1 million, eventually reportedly rising to $2 million, which includes communications from Ole Miss staff and coaches. Ole Miss had Trinidad Chambliss call this linebacker, who is in class at Clemson. They had Jackson Dart call this linebacker, encouraging him to enter the transfer portal. Now, the reason Dabo finds out about this is because the player told him, hey, Ole Miss is reaching out to me, and, I want to be at Clemson, but they keep reaching out. I'm just letting you know. So he rats out on Ole Miss, and then January 22nd, the player officially enters the transfer portal again and commits to Ole Miss, flipping from his prior commitment to Clemson. And Dabo Swinney laid it all out and said Pete Golding, what he did is tampering. He's turning it all into the NCAA. And I usually find Dabo hard to take, and he kind of drives me nuts, and I find him annoying, but I have no problem with what he did here. He's trying to get the game back to what it used to be, or at least some sort of governing body would be nice. I get the rules of players getting paid. They should, right? They're bringing in billions of dollars to these institutions. They should be able to make some dough, but it needs to be regulated. If a kid has already signed a deal and in classes, another school shouldn't be contacting him. And look, I know Ole Miss has been on the opposite end of this with LSU, right? And Lane Kiffin doing it to them. And Ole Miss is like, oh, little poor us. They're doing the same thing. And it's getting out of control. So I respect Dabo getting out. I mean, he had every single receipt. It's a little over 8 minutes long. It's on my Twitter page if you want to go watch it. I am Nick Wize, W-I-Z-E is how you can find me. All 8 minutes are fascinating. Because while I'm watching, I'm like, no way this kid's going to actually go to Ole Miss after telling Clemson Ole Miss is hitting him up and ratting him out. And he did. Ends up packing up. He's now at Ole Miss. And college sports are a mess. And it drives me nuts because this is coming from a guy that loves college football more than the NFL. I like college basketball more than the NBA. But it is absolutely getting out of hand. And so kudos to Dabo Swinney for doing the right thing. I wish every coach in college football would step up and call out the tampering because it's happening. And it's the one thing about college football. There's a lot of things about college football that drive me nuts, but this is the one at the top that really drives me crazy. You know, imagine if this was the NFL, which it's kind of turning into, unfortunately. But, like, imagine if you just signed Baker Mayfield, or, well, let me use somebody that you like more. Because right now I know the relationship with Baker's mixed. You just signed Mike Evans, and then somebody else comes in and like, hey, Mike, I know you just signed this deal, but we're going to give you more. You know, it would be wild for a player to just leave. But that's what's happening in college, and it sucks. Something else happened in college football yesterday that I hate even more than that, I think. Maybe I don't hate it as much as the tampering, but it's number 2 on the list. I don't like it. You're not going to like it. We'll talk about that next.